The Capitals fall in the first game of the regular season, and what changes need to take place before the Caps take on the Flames Monday night? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. The Capitals season has started, and I would love to talk Caps hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for more details. In today's episode of Locked On Capitals, we talk about how your Capitals fall in the very first game of the regular season. Already people are saying, Dan, don't read too much into this. It was the first game. It's just the first loss. It doesn't mean anything. To those people, I would say if they would have won 4-0, you would have talked about it a lot and thought it meant a whole lot. We'll talk about that in the show. We'll talk about how Connor McMichael is a man on a mission. And his mission is to be on this team for the duration of the regular season and into the postseason. He will not get sent down to Hershey. That is his mission. A little bit later in the show, we will talk about how Miro got his first AHL point. We'll talk about changes before Monday night's game. But just to get it going here, we will talk about how the Caps lost to the Penguins in a rough game. It was, there, make no mistake about it, it was a horrible clunker out there that the Capitals lost, and they started, with, pretty good. They had some good opportunities on net and ultimately just took their eyes off the puck. They took the pressure off, and then there were certain gaps that, helped lead to their demise. You take a look at Sandin, with that missed pass. You take a look at Alex Ovechkin coughing up the puck. It was just a bad game. And, again, that's what I talked about off the top there is people are saying, don't read too much into it. It was the first game and it was a loss. But those same people, if they would have won 4-0, they would have read a whole lot into that. So I'm the kind of person that I like to see both sides of the coin. And I'm not, a Debbie Downer or Danny Downer in this case. But what I'm saying is that I think that you can learn things from it. And I think that, it was a really bad start to not find the back of the net one time. Well, I just don't think that is excusable. It marked the first time in the team's 49-year franchise history that it had been held off the score sheet in a season opener. That's not the kind of records that you want to have in the first game of the regular season, but I get it. I don't want to get, too down and out about it, but changes need to be made. And for the people that are saying that it had something to do with Charlie Lindgren, I don't think that's the case. Would like to have had some of those back? Sure, but he saved 31 of 35. A lot of those were high danger shots. And all things considered, I think Charlie played rather well. If it had been Darcy Kemper and they played that same way, I think it would have been a similar score. So I don't want to fault Charlie Lindgren on this at all. The Capitals only mustered 19 shots on goal. Ovi led with 4. So that was the tough thing there. They didn't generate many high-quality opportunities. Misplays, like I said, by Sandin and Ovechkin. McMichael looked good despite not being able to find the back of the net, putting himself in a good position to do great things. I ultimately think that he has found his spot on this team, a big role. We'll talk about Connor a little bit later in the show, but that's what I'm talking about. Things need to get cleaned up before the next game. So How is that going to manifest itself? Well, they're already talking about the changes that are going to need to be made in the lineup, who is going to be in and who's going to be out. They're already mentioning that, and it's one of the things that needs to be addressed now before it gets out of hand. We don't want to go 0-2 on the season. So, what can we expect from the Caps lineup versus the Flames? Not much has changed, except Anthony Mantha is the odd man out and Alex Alexiev is in over Lucas Johansson. I wouldn't read too much into that. I think Harbs is just looking to get a spark and change from dropping 4-0 to the Pens. And, the Anthony Mantha thing should come as no surprise to anyone. I was surprised to a certain extent that he was in over Phillips. Then, of course, we know Phillips was in because of the whole Protas and the Darcy Kemper thing, that whole deal there. But, and I don't want to make this about me bashing Anthony Mantha. He just hasn't shown up. And, one of the things is, it's called hockey and it's professional hockey. Like they say, it's called show business, not show happy. The same thing goes for here. Anthony Mantha is a great guy. He lost 10 pounds. He hired the mental coach and, he seems like a pretty decent guy. With that said, they need contributions from all these people. So Anthony Mantha, as far as what we know today, as I record this at 9:19 p.m. local, is that Anthony Mantha is potentially not going to be in the game, and it's going to be Alex Alexiev over Lucas Johansson. Again, I'm honestly kind of happy to get a good look at Alex Alexiev. I know he put in the work this past summer with a strength and conditioning coach to see what he has. I know we've seen him in the preseason, but the regular season is always a whole different kettle of fish, if you will. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has in the tank. I had Alex Alexiev circled on this team before Joel Edmondson came and, all these other things that transpired during the preseason. But it'll be a good game Monday night as the Caps take on the Flames. You got to think that Spencer Carberry and his assistants and the players themselves have been going over the game film to find out what went wrong. It was a poor game, all things considered. And, that was one of the things that I did. I did a Locked On Now, or, I do a 1 minute short after the game. And I talked about how things were going bad. And people pointed out to me real quickly that, hey, Dan, don't read too much into it. It's just the first game. I get all that. I know that you're not going to win every single game of the regular season, but to lose 4-0 and for it to be the first time in team history that in the season opener, you were held scoreless. Those are not the things that we're looking forward to. But moving on, can't live your life in the rear view. Got to keep looking forward. You got to go 1-0 every day, as FP Santangelo used to say, who used to do the play-by-play for the Nationals. And it's true. You got to put everything else like that in the rear view and just concentrate on your next opponent. And the next opponent is the Calgary Flames. And it's they're going to have to be up for it because they're going to bring it as well. There's a lot of players on this team that are trying to prove a lot of things on the Flames as well. So I think the biggest thing is the Capitals have to maintain the pressure that they had to start the game in the first period and just continue to go with it because it seemed like a team that was pretty disjointed. Like I said, the Sandin miss pass, Alex Ovechkin going and then coughing up the puck. Honestly, what it was about was the Penguins were more hungry. They wanted the win more than the Caps did. But again, to the people that said it had something to do with Charlie Lindgren, that the Capitals lost because of him, no, that's not the case at all. And that's just someone that's looking at the score sheet, and the score sheet, even that looks pretty good. So things that the Capitals need to work on is applying the pressure early. Stop with the odd man breaks. That was one of the things that Spencer Carberry said the Capitals did last season that led to their demise. Quit putting the pressure on the goalie all the time. Charlie Lindgren or Darcy Kemper under duress, for a majority of the game is never an ideal situation. So those are the things that I think that the Capitals need to clean up if they want to have success in the next game here. And ultimately, I think they have what it takes. They're just going to have to apply everything that they learned in the preseason and use that going forward. All right, so coming up here, we will talk about how Ivan Miroshnichenko got his first point of the regular season in the AHL. What does that ultimately mean? I'll talk about that coming up. Alex Ovechkin scores a hat trick. The Capitals win the Stanley Cup. And if you want to win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. These are all possible scenarios this season, but have to have a chance at winning big. You need to play daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper as the official daily fantasy app of Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. With Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. With stud players like Alex Ovechkin and Tom Wilson, all you need to do is pick more or less on stats for these stars. Choose stats like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. You heard me, the Capitals fans, 100% payouts on Sleeper. So start paying attention and get your picks right so you could win big. Use promo code Locked On NHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's Locked On NHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for more details. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure and subscribe or follow Locked On Capitals wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. The regular season is here, and I've got you guys covered, so make sure and subscribe or follow Locked On Capitals today. So in this next segment here, we are going to talk about a couple players that were in the preseason and mini camps and preseason games that already got their first points. And one of the players I'm going to talk about actually got a goal. But to start it off here, Ivan Miroshnichenko was one of the guys. And if you're an everydayer of the show, you know I've talked about him. I've been banging the drum on him all preseason that this is going to be his year. And then he was cut and sent down to Hershey. And I ultimately think it still will be his year at some point. One of the things that Spencer Carberry said is that he thinks that Miro needs to work on his game, being more acclimated to the North American game. And I think that, ultimately he didn't really do anything wrong. It's just that he needs to fine tune some of the things that, make an NHL player great. I think that he has the raw materials. I think that he has the right recipe in the pot. It just needs to marinate a little bit down in Hershey for a while, and I think it's going to be a recipe for success. But he did. He got his first point, his first professional point in North American hockey, and he did it by assisting on Hardy Haman Ochtel's goal. And that's what it's all about, just taking these steps and keep continuing to work on your game, much in the same way that Connor McMichael did, and I'll talk about him a little bit later in the show, is that even though you got sent down to Hershey, again, it's professional hockey. It is one level down from the NHL. Don't read too much into that. I think that, some people, and Braden Holtby said it the best. He goes, the difference between the NHL and the AHL is razor fine. So he is going to get a really great opportunity to play against some really great teams, and he's going to get some good playing time. And I think that, I'm going to go ahead and say by midseason, he is going to be good to go for the Capitals as long as there is a roster spot available. That's going to be the interesting thing. Miro got the primary assist on Hardy Haman Ochtel's goal. Miro and Ochtel were some of the last cut from the Caps roster. You remember that? I was more surprised, honestly, about Hardy Haman Ochtel getting cut from the team than Miro, because that was kind of in the air for a while. That Miro did a good job. He played well when he played with Alex Ovechkin, and it was a great story about how Ovi took him under his wing and all that. But, again, he just needs to work on his game. I was surprised about Hardy Haman Ochtel because everyone kind of had him circled on making the big team this year. So, and he might still as well. He just needs to work on his game. Both Miro and Ochtel are waiver exempt, which is ultimately why they were cut. No fear of them getting scooped up by another team. And that was one of the things there that I think that if there was that fear, I think that they probably would still be on the big team. So, professional sports and the waiver wire and getting sent up and down is kind of a tricky thing. And you got to kind of read into it a little bit more than just taking a look at the transaction sheet, whether it be, on a blog or the official website, and to just really look into it. So when you take a look at it on Miro and Ochtel getting sent down, we know that Miro needs to work on his game. I don't think that Hardy Haman Ochtel really needed to work on a whole lot. But I think that what it was about is that the roster was rather full and that they were waiver exempt. So there was no fear of them getting scooped up because you got to think for me, Miroshnichenko would have gotten scooped up for sure, for sure. Miro gets his first AHL point, assisting, on Hardy Haman Octel's goal. Miroshnichenko made his AHL debut with the Hershey Bears on Saturday night as the left wing and didn't get a point. That changed Sunday, however, against the Cleveland Monsters as they picked up the big dub 5-2. The Bears just going along, playing pretty well. I mean, it's early in their season as well, and they're coming fresh off a Calder Cup win. So it is exciting to see what the Bears have in the tank. What is going to happen for me is I think that they're going to just continue to keep working on their game, and it's not going to be long before they get their opportunity. What is one of the unfortunate things that I know almost 100% for sure? I'm going to go ahead and say 90. I don't want to say 100. Maybe they'll get lucky and there won't be, next to no injuries. But if this team is anything like last year's team, they're going to be hit with some injuries. And they, despite the fact that they added a lot of young players, relatively speaking, they are still the second oldest team in the NHL. And why is that important? Because older people get injured that much quicker. They take longer to heal. Listen to Alex Ovechkin, who's 38 years old. He thinks he's old. He has no idea. Again, I don't play professional hockey, but he talked about that you have to take it a little bit more easy, that, you have to give yourself a little bit more time in the off season to heal, to rest and relax, and maybe not push quite as hard. If I take a look at Alex Ovechkin, he still looks like he's in peak shape to me, but that's what it's all about. Oshie's older, Carlson's older, all of those things. So how that ties into what I'm talking about here in this segment is that is going to present opportunities for players like Miroshnichenko, Hardy Haman Octel, Vinny Iorio, potentially Joe Snively, something like that this season. So that, don't despair young Caps players, prospects, young Hershey Bears. I think that your opportunity is going to come. You just got to be patient. And if anyone knows about that, it's some of the players that have been down in Hershey for quite some time. Take a look at Lucas Johansson, for example. He's been stewing down in Hershey for quite some time, was integral in the Hershey Bears' success in winning a Calder Cup, and he finally got his opportunity. It does appear that he is going to be the odd man out against the Flames in this next game here. Again, things could change at practice tomorrow. All I'm telling you is what I saw at practice today. Things could change, but if today's what was on ice is any indicator, it's going to be Mantha out, it's going to be Lucas Johansson out, and it's going to be Alexiev in. So that is what we know for sure right now, is that it's going to be a good thing. And it's, again, I'm excited for Miroshnichenko. I'm excited for Hardy Haman Octel to see what they have in the tank, and looking forward to their opportunity that inevitably they're going to get on this team, getting called up just based on injuries or something like that. All right, so coming up here after the break, we will talk about the breakout season this season and how great he played last season, and ultimately why this year has turned out to be the year for Connor McMichael. We'll talk about him coming up. Passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your right every time, or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Connor McMichael is quite the player here, isn't he? He finally made good on his promise that he was going to make the big team, and he did that. He made the roster cut. But one of the other things that he talked about is he said, "I'm not only happy about making the team." I want to be up here for the duration of the season, postseason, whatever lies ahead for the Capitals. He does not want to put on a brown jersey this year, even though they look great. He wants to keep the red on. Why? Well, of course, it's the NHL. Why wouldn't you? It's the Premier League. Also, the money's got to be pretty sweet for him as well. And just, he's been playing long enough, probably almost as long as he's been walking, that you're putting in the work. Your resume, speaks for itself. This is your opportunity, and he is making the most of it. And what makes this year different than other years is because, and I don't ever want to, sell this down. I want to underline this and just really boost this up. Is that Spencer Carberry is now the head coach of this team, and why is that important? Is because, well, for one, Spencer Carberry has a rapport. He has a history of familiarity with a lot of these young players because why? He coached them in Hershey. And he is the youngest coach in the NHL. And sometimes, a younger coach can relate a little bit more to a younger player. I understand there's still quite a disparity, 41. And, I think that McMichael's in his early 20s. You know what I'm talking about, but still far closer than it was with Lavi. And so I think that whatever the case may be, he's playing in top form. And one of the things that I know, and I've spoke about that on the show, is the swagger, the confidence that was in these players from winning that Calder Cup. I want to say that I think that if the Bears didn't win a Calder Cup last season, I don't think that these players would walk around with that swagger. You saw that in LaPierre, you saw it in Malenstein, and now you see it in Connor McMichael, that they're like, yes, I am that good. And I've seen it in Lucas Johansson as well. It was a game changer for them mentally because they had to overcome many obstacles to win a Calder Cup. They don't just hand those things out. It's not a participation prize. You really have to earn it. And the Bears had to overcome a lot to get that. And I think that that is where that emanates from. Connor McMichael had one heck of a training camp, and that's ultimately why he's playing on the big team. How was he rewarded? By finding a role on the top six, not relegated to the fourth line. We saw that briefly from him where he was like the left wing on the fourth line last season. Total misutilization for Connor McMichael. And again, I don't want to speak disparagingly of Peter Laviolette, but I'm happy to put those years in the rearview mirror. And I think that Spencer Carberry, despite what we saw in the first game, I'm not going to judge Spencer Carberry based on the first game. I think that this Caps team is in a better position now than they have been in years. Because, you think before that, Reardon, I think they were in good shape under Trotz, but it's been tough for several years, shall we say. So the Caps, good for the young players. Finally, this integration that is not such a foreign concept to a lot of other teams. It was with the Capitals, But again, finding a role in the top six, that is a sign of faith from Spencer Carberry that he's putting him that high up in the lineup. Ultimately, I would like to see him at the center position at some point. I know it's a bit of a crowded house out there. Who's coming out? Is it going to be Dowd, Kuznetsov, Backstrom, Strome? It's going to be difficult. So to a certain extent, he's going to have to wait for an injury, or maybe Kuzi, maybe has a really poor start to the season. Again, I don't wish that upon anyone, but I'm just trying to think how he can get integrated to that center position. McMichael never sulked when getting sent down to Hershey last November. He was an important piece of the Bears win in the Calder Cup. Make no mistake about it. He was clutch in the Calder Cup playoffs there. And ultimately why they won it. And it wasn't just him. It was a collective group down there. It was great coaching is why they won it. But he was a key piece in that lineup. Why is he playing better now? Because he knows there was a reluctance to play young players and was afraid of making mistakes, according to Kuzi, in talking to Monumental's Tarek El-Bashir. It was an interesting assessment from Kuznetsov talking about that he thought he was scared of making mistakes. Evgeny Kuznetsov kind of had that same sentiment as well. He thought that he was misutilized and underutilized. He wasn't into the dump and chase and then screening the goalie. And I think that that is not Spencer Carberry's brand of hockey, and he doesn't have to worry about making a mistake. And some of that has to do with Spencer Carberry. But like I talked about off the top of this segment, is that he has that confidence that, if I shoot it, it's going to go in. And if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. I think to a certain extent, to get back to Mantha for just a brief second, is he's caught up in his head. He's not finding the back of the net. And that snowball in your head just gets bigger and bigger and bigger about, I can't do it anymore. And that's why ultimately he had to hire that mental coach. He spent most of his time on the wing, but I would like to see him at center, like I talked about. He's been excellent the whole way through camp, Carberry said. He was good the other night as well. Confidence, playmaking ability, making plays when they're there, making smart decisions when they're not there, the total package. He demonstrated that through camp, through preseason games, and I liked his game the other night against Pittsburgh. So despite the fact that the Capitals did not pick up the dub, he stood out for me. That was noticeable, is that, he got some good shots out there. And ultimately, that's all you can hope for, is putting yourself in a position to succeed. And sometimes they didn't find the net, but he was able to get good shots out there. He positioned himself, in a position to be successful. And that's what we're hoping for. Again, those are the things that the Caps are going to have to work on if they're going to want to have success in the next game. And that's what's, right in front of them right now is the Calgary Flames. But as we take a look at the schedule, it's going to be busy to start off, because on Wednesday they take on the Senators and on Saturday they take on the Habs. So everything that I've heard from different podcasters and different sources is that the Habs are a lot better team this year than in previous years. We know that the Senators, under new ownership, is a team that's kind of perennially always talked about. It's going to be their year, but it's always like, nope, it's the next year or the next year. And one of the things that's been the Senators' big bugaboo is net minding. You take a look at the Habs last season. They had a down season, but historically are a really great team. That is a team that gave the Caps fits. I don't know, 10 years ago when they made it in the playoffs. So it is going to be a good litmus test for this team under Spencer Carberry's tutelage to see, you say that you're better. Seeing is believing. That's what I'm all about. I never want to be the kind of person that's, just blind faith with blinders on, hear no evil, see no evil. I want to see success on the ice. And what I want to see from the Capitals from the moment the puck drops against the Flames is intensity, not taking your foot off the gas. I want to see Tom Wilson engaged with his physical style of play, even though he kind of wants to put that in the rear view. And, one of the things that I heard him talk about in Mike Vogel's podcast is that, he wants to fight under his own terms. What does that mean? He kind of realized the older that he got that he is not being best served sitting in the penalty box. There's 5 minutes I could have been, making shots on net, potentially scoring goals, that he doesn't have to drop the gloves for everyone, but he still needs to hold on to that skill set. That's very important. We need Alex Ovechkin bringing his physical style. If you can't tell, I'm all about a physical style, peppering your opponent almost like a pre-war operation where you just hit him with a barrage of physicality, smashing people on the board, back checking, forechecking, getting it done. You can't play, half cocked out there and expect to have success. And, I think that some people thought that the Pens were just, not this great of a team. They were a great team. And as it showed, they blanked the Caps. So that's the thing that I want to see going in against the game, against the Flames, is a physicality out there. And I'm not talking about, dropping the mitts. I'm talking about finishing your checks. You saw Ovechkin just slamming people into the boards. That's peppering your opponent for like a pre-war operation. That is what I want to see from the Capitals. You weaken your opponent by just overpowering force of physicality, and good things will happen. That's kind of Dale Hunter hockey to a certain extent. And, some people kind of like to disparage, his short tenure with the Capitals. but he's had success, in different leagues that he's coached. So there is some truth to that. In any event, that's my keys for success for the Capitals, to start the season and to have success in their next game against the Flames. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that watch this on YouTube. And I also don't want to forget everyone that listens on the audio side as well. You guys are what makes this podcast audio and video wise successful, and I have you guys to thank. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.